Hello, my name is Glenn, and I will guide you through the current state of the Azure integration platform. Integration has traditionally been all about ESBs, message brokers, and the exchange of messages between on-premises systems. Today, many companies wish to integrate beyond their firewall, typically with software as a service-based application. This change is reflected in the uprise of API-based integrations using lightweight protocols. With that change, a whole new range of integration scenarios is popping up. For example, we have our hybrid application integration where we connect our on-premises system with the Azure cloud, or the software as a service integration where we use popular software as a service applications inside our integrations. For example, we could connect to Office 365, Dropbox, or OneDrive. And of course, there's the Internet of Things, where all buildings are being connected to the cloud. What we're really talking about here is modern integration, where we have enterprise apps on premises and in the cloud. We have many different endpoints, and integration is really the key. Integration is still important even when we have our enterprise apps in the cloud. And this is where Logic Apps comes into play. Logic Apps is really about orchestrating anything. You can run your mission-critical complex integration scenarios in the cloud very easily. You can connect with on-premises systems, create hybrid and cloud applications. Logic Apps is positioned for the future, as everything in Logic Apps is built around API-centric connectivity. So, for example, everything you connect with inside Logic Apps is an API. When, for example, you pull an FTP location, this is also considered as an API, as the connector in Logic Apps is using APIs to connect to that FTP location. As already said, it's very easy to connect custom on-premise applications to the cloud and to automate your enterprise application integrations, your B2B, EDI, and business processes with Logic Apps. Logic Apps comes with tons out-of-the-box connectors.
As you can see, there's a whole range of popular connected to software as a service offerings like Dynamic CRM, OneDrive, Salesforce, SendGrid, Jammer, and so on. There's also a big offering when it comes to enterprise application integration. For example, you can have your transform. You can it has support for X12, Edifact, AS2, and of course there's a whole range of hybrid connectivity options. You can easily connect to your BizTalk server, to your SQL server, or your SharePoint server on premises. There's also a whole range of protocols supported like HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, SMTP, and so on. We're now going to focus on the core integration services of Logic Apps, and I'm going to guide you through a couple of possibilities that you have when building a Logic App. You can trigger a Logic Apps in 4 different ways. The first way is on a recurring schedule. That way you can define a schedule as you want, and it really supports complex scenarios. For example, only execute this Logic App at the first Monday of the month. Or you can schedule your Logic Apps to run every hour. The next one is pulling an API. And if you remember from the intro, as Logic Apps is focused around APIs, basically you can pull anything. You can pull on an FTP location, you can pull your OneDrive, you can pull a shared folder on premises, and so on and so on. The next thing is HTTP post request. You can expose your Logic Apps to the internet, of course, through a secured way. And this will allow you to send HTTP post requests to that Logic Apps. And that way you will be able to trigger a workflow that is connected to that logic app. And the last one is a webhook subscription, where you create a webhook subscription, and that webhook subscription will then trigger your logic app. Next to triggering a flow, there's also tons of possibilities on controlling a flow. You can send responses back to the original caller, or create a response and drop that response on some kind of folder, or some share, or call another software as a service application. Logic apps supports for each. For example, when you receive a batch of invoices, you can loop over those invoices, act upon a single invoice, and then continue with the next invoice. A bit aligned with for each, there's the split on. Supported here, you can, when receiving a batch of invoices or any other, or orders or anything other like that, you can split that batch and execute a parallel execution on each of those incoming messages. You can have a do until, for example, keep on polling this folder or this share until there's no more files. And there's conditions where you can take action upon a certain value inside the message, or a variable or something like that. What is coming up next is the switch case, and that will also provide you another way of controlling your flow. Another important aspect is that the core engine of logic apps is already very rich, but it also provides certain extension points. First of all, you can extend your logic apps by deploying or calling your own API apps. When you deploy, for example, an API app towards your subscription, you can have auto discovery in logic apps to use that API with a first-class designer experience from inside logic apps. So that's one way to extend the power of your logic apps, by building some custom code or custom API. Next one is Azure Function, and Azure Function is the new kid in town on the Azure platform, and it allows you to extend your logic apps with custom code. For example, if you need to have like a small piece of code running in your logic app, you can choose to use Azure Functions to help you with that. Just like the API apps, it has auto discovery of your Azure functions that are deployed inside your subscription. And it's very easy to create Azure functions inline through the Logic Apps Designer. The last component to extend the engine of Logic Apps is Logic Apps itself. You can use nested workflows. That means you can build a Logic Apps which act as a component, and you can reuse that component across different Logic Apps and really build complex integration scenarios with that. Of course, again, just like API apps and Azure Function, it has auto discovery of those workflows. So it provides you with a first-class designer experience to call your existing Logic Apps from Logic Apps. So that was a basic overview of Logic Apps, of the basic offering of Logic Apps. Now I want to go a little deeper and give you more details on the enterprise messaging capabilities of Logic Apps. So the core activity on enterprise messaging is the integration account in Logic Apps, and the integration account allows you to host your schemas, mappings, trading partners, agreements, and certificates, to host them in Azure and use them from within Logic Apps to create more complex flows. You can use your schemas to validate XML. You can execute mappings. Your trading partners and agreements certificates are there to create EDI and AS2 flows. So that's really another powerful way of building enterprise messaging with logic apps. Important to mention is that this integration account is extensible. You can store your own configuration in there and use across your logic apps. And of course, this integration account is manageable through the REST APIs, through PowerShell, with the Azure Portal itself, and with Visual Studio. Of course, this all in a secure and scalable way, provided out of the box via the Azure platform. So with the integration account, that opens up a whole new range of message handling with your logic apps. It allows you to have flexible content types. It supports binary, JSON, XML. It has schema support for JSON. As already said, you can execute mappings. You can use your existing mapping from BizTalk server and import them in your integration account and then them across your logic apps. If you install the Logic Apps SDK, you can use the Visual Studio Mapper to really build those mappings like you used to do in BizTalk. There's XML validation available. So when a message comes in, you can let it validate by the Logic App engine, and that will give you a result if your XML is valid or not, and then you can further act upon that. With the integration account and message handling of that, you also open up a whole new range of flat file support. You can convert from and to flat file, just like in BizTalk, you have CSV delimited or positional support, and you have built-in type conversion from JSON to XML or to with Logic Apps and the integration account, you also have very flexible processing. You can decouple messages from processing. You can split messages. You have sync and async protocols. If you want to do PubSub, you have to do this via service bus. But here again, Logic Apps supports service bus out of the box and provides you with a real rich experience on building those integration scenarios via service bus. And last but not least, for enterprises, there's of course the EDI processing support, where you have X12 and Edifact support. It also supports batching, and of course your trading partner management that you're used from BizTalk is supported inside of Logic Apps. So another important aspect is the hybrid integration offering of Logic Apps. In this case, we have two possibilities to connect from your cloud application towards on-premises systems. And the first one is the on-premise data gateway. So the on-premise data gateway is a shared offering that is used not only by Logic Apps, but it's used by Power Apps, by Power BI, and by Microsoft Flow. It's used by all those offerings to expose data from on-premises to the cloud. As already said, you can manage those connections from the cloud. It's in a secured way, and you can reuse this across Logic Apps and other service offerings. Currently, the on-premise data gateway supports SQL Server, SharePoint, WebSphere, MQ, File, and BizTalk. And currently, there's also an SAP connector in preview. I invite you to check out our Codit blog, which has a a description on how to set up that data gateway to connect to your SAP system on premises. So the next thing of having hybrid integration to on-premises system is the Logic App Adapter. And the Logic App Adapter is a new offering that was released with BizTalk Server 2016. If you have followed our other webinar, Peter has given more about. But to summarize, the Logic App Adapter is an IIS managed endpoint that is being deployed on your BizTalk server. And that IIS management endpoint is exposing your BizTalk artifacts to the cloud. And with that connection, you can use it with or without the on-premise data gateway. This Logic App Adapter will expose your receive location, send ports, and other artifacts to the cloud, which you will be able to use from inside your Logic apps. Another important topic is, of course, the tracking tools. When building integrations, you need to know, you want to know what is going on with your Logic apps and want to see the execution. Logic apps provide you out of the box with debugging history. You can see your trigger history, you can see your run history, you can even see your monitoring view and diagnostics and alerts. So with the monitoring view, you can really see on each step that has been executed inside your Logic apps, and you can see the input and the output of that step. And that way, it allows you to really see what has happened inside your Logic apps and to act upon that if there are issues. Another important aspect here is the diagnostic and alert. For example, you can create an alert with Azure Alerts to have, for example, a text message or an email to say when a Logic app has failed or when there's an issue. When you want further monitoring, you can send your events and messages to storage or event hubs, and then create an application insights monitoring on that to really create your own dashboard to see those messages flowing in. Logic apps also comes with a tracking API to allow you to track custom properties or the properties you want. And those tracking options can be exported towards Operations Management Suite. When it comes to Operation Management Suite, there's an out-of-the-box offering there, which allows you to create a dashboard to show you what has happened. But this is currently only supported for your EDI and X12 flows. So this is how the dashboard looks like. You can search your logs, you can see the active threads and so on. And here you can see the Logic apps B2B dashboard, where you can see your AS2 connections, see if they were successful or if they failed. And then you have also an overview of your X12 and Edifacts offering. So what's next in Logic apps? There's a whole new range of things coming, and as we speak, more and more things are being added to the platform to really provide you that rich that Microsoft is aiming at. You have your dynamic XML mapping with parameters that will be supported. There will be a whole new template experience that will be provided. There will also be a possibility to define your own variables and to reuse them across your Logic apps. Currently, you can also already do that via the Compose, but it will be a more richer experience. Next to that, there will also be a whole new range of triggers that will be made available. And for enterprise messaging, I think the SAP, the SQL, and the blob trigger will be the most important that will be released soon. Of course, there, as already said during the beginning of this talk, there are a lot of connectors being added to the platform every week, but the most important one that is coming soon is the Oracle DB and ESB connectors. The team is also working on improving the Logic Apps runtime for large messages and collections. So if you have batches coming in with 10,000 invoices or orders, the runtime will be optimized for that. And as already said, the platform is moving fast. We have to cope with that things are rapidly changing. And I therefore invite you to really keep an eye out on our blog, as we are actively monitoring those changes and blogging a lot about that. There's also a monthly Logic Apps Live by the Logic Apps team itself, and that is hosted on YouTube. So I also invite you to go and watch that. So to summarize, Logic Apps is the integration platform as a service by Microsoft. It's fully managed and flexible. You can start small by building a small integration and then grow as you need. It's an extendable engine. You can call your own API apps. You can use Azure functions. You can use nested workflows. And of course, this is all made available on the Microsoft Azure platform. And it's supported by an SLA that is covered by the Azure platform, and of course, in a secure way.